Morning world, it's the 1st of October 2019. The moon is heavily involved in Scorpio, sun's in Libra. It's not a void moon today. So this is for astrological students. It's not only a look at what's happening during October astrologically, but it's also looking at the repercussions of October into the near/medium term future. Let's deal with October itself first of all. On the surface, it appears that there's not a lot going on during October, astrologically speaking, but that's on the surface. Peek just underneath the surface, and there's a maelstrom. It's difficult for me to be as objective as I'd like to be because of what's happening in my country politically at the moment, and as I'm sure the world is sick of hearing, Britain will allegedly be leaving the European Union on the 31st of October, of which I will do a more in-depth video in the next few days. I'll try not to let that colour my astrological perception of this coming month. Over this coming month, what we got? Well, Neptune is merrily, happily going retrograde through Pisces and not creating any major problems. Uranus is going retrograde through Taurus, and for most of the month it's relatively quiet. Saturn is beginning to inch forward now in Capricorn, and he's getting on and doing his stuff. And Jupiter is moving faster and faster through Sagittarius. This is going with Jupiter in Sagittarius. This is going to have an impact on the American horoscope and the fortunes of the USA. And I do expect certain situations in America to become much more exacerbated, larger than life, and over the top as we get towards the end of October. Venus moves into Scorpio around the 8th, 9th of this month, and will stay there for the remainder of the month. Mars will move into Libra in about 4 days from now. Mars doesn't particularly like being in Libra, so it's not a particularly auspicious position because Mars is loud and fiery and feisty, whereas Libra is much more around balance and harmony. It's Venus's territory. But then we come to the first of the major phenomena in October 2019. It's not as if there are major aspects. Yes, Jupiter will sesquiquadrate, that's a nice word for you, Uranus, that's a square and a half. It will also semi-sextile Pluto. It's not really a big deal. Mars is going to square Saturn towards the end of the month. That's a fairly meaty aspect, but it's something that happens sort of once or twice a year on average, so it's not really a big deal. The big deals come with the Mercury retrograde that's coming and the new and full moon. Let's deal with the Mercury retrograde first of all. Mercury will go retrograde around about 3:30 in the afternoon UK time on Thursday, October the 31st. It will go retrograde at 27.5 degrees of Scorpio. Mercury will enter its retrograde shadow period around the 12th of October. So as a standard rule of thumb, my advice to everyone connected, everyone basically, is that from the 12th of October through to the 31st of October, we're in the advanced Mercury retrograde shadow, and there's going to be a lot of pontification, a lot of fine words, and not a lot of verifiable actions. Anything that is decided, acted upon, initiated or triggered between October the 12th and October the 31st will not work out the way it is anticipated or expected. It's Mercury retrograde shadow. It's not going to happen the way everyone thinks it will. To compound matters, just as we get into the Mercury retrograde shadow, there is a full moon at 9 p.m, 10 p.m. UK time on Sunday the 13th of October at 20¼ degrees of Aries, square to Pluto by 1/4 degree. The Sun and the Moon in the sky in Libra and Aries respectively will be squaring Pluto in Capricorn. This is an extremely challenging aspect. Having both the Sun and the Moon square Pluto. I know a couple of people with this in their charts. They're both very, very powerful people because they're older. When younger, this is one of the horrible aspects to deal with. It forces you into dealing with challenges around intensity and extremes, crises and trauma, obsessive and compulsive behaviour, and forces you as you get older into purging and detoxing and cleansing and purifying and eliminating oneself in order to find the phoenix within, to transform and regenerate and rebirth. When this is in a global position, it seems to me that around this time, around the 10th to the 14th of October, we're going to be faced collectively in a number of different environments in the world with a lot of subversive, manipulative, underhand and coercive behavioural patterns that seem to be, well, downright nasty. It's going to be a very challenging time for a lot of people. And I personally won't be believing anything I'm being told in any form by the media or anyone with seemingly vested interests at that time. It could get very nasty. This is followed at the end of the month on Monday the 28th of October at about 4 a.m, 3:30 a.m. UK time. By the the new moon in Scorpio at 4½ degrees of Scorpio, exactly opposite Uranus. So the new moon, Sun and Moon, both opposite Uranus. This will lead to sudden, unexpected, unpredictable changes in a way that could be very disruptive and chaotic, very challenging with things coming out of left field that are going to upset the status quo and cause unpredictable challenges. And yet at the same time, it could also be a time of innovation, novelty, originality and stimulus. It could set us free collectively from a lot of old patterns. When you put the full moon squaring Pluto and the new moon opposite Uranus together in 1 month, coupled with a Mercury retrograde which will continue through November, it points to a very confusing and disturbing time in a way that says that things are going to change radically in an unpredictable way. We cannot safely predict the future in the short to medium term. However, let's extend this a little bit. We have Mars moving into Libra. In February, mid-February to late March, Mars will be in Capricorn, along with Jupiter and Saturn and Pluto. So for 6 weeks, we will have these 4 big planets in Capricorn. That is going to create a lot of changes. Mars will be conjuncting Jupiter, conjuncting Saturn, conjuncting Pluto. That is in mid-February to late March. So the astrologically inclined amongst you may choose to look at that and start thinking, okay, that mid-February to late March is going to be a time of definitive actions. But because of the nature of the conjunctions and the planets concerned, they may be rash, ill thought out actions that could be a bit over spontaneous. If they are, we are collectively setting ourselves up for trouble later next year, because at the end of June 2020, Mars moves into Aries. It then goes retrograde at the end of Aries in early mid-September of next year, and will stay in Aries from the end of June 2020 through to the start of January 2021. We will have over 6 months of Mars in Aries. During this time, Mars will square Jupiter, Saturn and Pluto 3 times. Now, I will cover this in depth more in another time to come. But for the astrological students amongst you, this is a time to look forward and think, okay, Mars is going to be interacting with the big boys of the zodiac over a 9-month to 12-month period in a way that is going to upset the status quo and forcibly challenge, change, regenerate and rebirth the structures of government, order and the collective way in which we live, and the rule of law and the rule of politics. This is not to be seen in a negative light, as in chaos or major disorder. It is to be seen in a way that's going to forcibly reorganise the structures of governance, and the way we are so-called collectively ruled. I suspect that by the time we're into the start of 2021, the nature of politics, the nature of government, and the nature of the way that the systems of empowerment in different countries are going to be very, very different to what they are now. This is a massive time, and it's a time that I need to segment and break down into individual bite-sized chunks. So perhaps this is something I'm going to be doing over October, looking at the coming 15, 16 months, because this is such a concentrated period. And this is the larger scale meaning of the Saturn-Pluto conjunction in Capricorn. More on this later. Meantime, we're in October. We're heading into uncharted territory. It's going to be fast. It's going to be loud. It's going to be dramatic. And we're heading into a Mercury retrograde. Surfboards that are ready, folks. Roller skates on. There's going to be some casualties. And there's also going to be a lot of people doing very well personally and individually out of this. Hopefully that involves people like you and me who are astute enough to be able to look at it all, shake our heads and go, the world's gone mad. The lunatics are running the asylum. It's going to be a very different world in 1 month's time. Catch you soon. Bye.